tell you that I and the RBDA board think there's an alternative approach that would be much less impactful on the environment of Coast Dairies and on the communities surrounding it. Bonny, Doon, Davenport, and Swanton. Here's a little parable. Suppose an entrepreneur came to us and he said, I'm going to put in an attraction here on the North Coast. The people are going to like it because it'll give them a chance to hike and bike and ride their horses around on this beautiful piece of property. And you have ocean views and wooded canyons with gorgeous streams running through. I expect about maybe 150,000 people or more will be coming here. It's going to create a lot of business for you. Your restaurants and hotels and outdoor adventures outfits, they'll all be doing quite well. I know there's some concern that it may impact the animals living up here, pumas, badgers, the raptors, steelhead, red-legged frogs. But don't worry about that. We'll take care of that. And I'll need some help dealing with some of those 150,000 people, because some of them are going to crash their mountain bikes. Or maybe they'll fall into ravines, or start fires, or get into car accidents, or have heart attacks. And then maybe a lot of them will go to the beach afterwards, and they'll park all over the highway, and they'll neglect to pack out their trash. But don't worry, once you give me the permission to open up this wonderful place, I'll do a detailed study of all the possible impacts. And then you'll have a chance to tell me what you think of it. So what would we say to this entrepreneur? We would say, is everyone up to now who wants to develop a piece of property? Hey, do your study first, and then we'll decide whether it's a good idea. Is that at least until much more study is done about the impacts of all the extra visitors, and a coordinated regional approach is developed to managing public properties on the North Coast, then we'll decide whether Coast Dairies become a national monument is the best solution, whether it's a good idea. And maybe it is, but let's just go slow down, figure it all out first, because once it's a national monument, it's a national monument forever. So this is some of the reasoning behind why we're saying this. Of course, monument status will bring many additional visitors to the coast, increase the impacts on the local services, the roads, the privacy and tranquility of the local communities, and most importantly, on the wildlife that inhabit Coast Dairies, which of course was the paramount reason for preserving this property in the first place. None of these impacts will be sufficiently mitigated or managed by any guaranteed benefits or additional resources. A lot of promises, no guarantees. The argument in favor of monument status is based on that there'll be more money for facilities, trails, and stewardship. Well, only $17,000 a year is actually guaranteed of that money. Maybe enough to pay the pension of the manager at the federal agency. Private donations aren't guaranteed, and it will likely be made that they'd be erratic and sporadic. BLM would only have access to one additional pot of money, but every year they'll have to compete with it with all the other national monuments, of which there are about 140. And note that Fort Ord's budget has been cut every year since it became a monument. Republican-dominated Congress is more inclined to reduce budgets than to increase them. An interesting editorial in the New York Times today, and in fact, it kind of jumped out at me. At the last estimate, BLM's parent agency, the Federal Interior Department, which also includes the Fish and Wildlife Service, had a maintenance backlog of, hold your breath here, between $13.2 and $19.3 billion. Wow. And so BLM is going to get more money for this? Dream on. So, another promise, better environmental protection for the land. Coast Dairies already has a very strict environmental protections built into the deed and into its coastal development permit. It doesn't need additional protections, and none are actually going to come with monument status. The deed and the coastal development permit guarantee in perpetuity no mining, no drilling, no housing or commercial development, no off-road recreational vehicles. So another promise that the campaign has made, or a selling point, monument status will prevent the land from ever being sold. Well, this property can't be sold without violating a pact that was signed in 2000 with the California Wildlife Conservation Board. It's extremely likely anyone would be motivated to buy it given the deed restrictions and all the other encumbrances which remain with the property regardless of who owns it. So another benefit, National Environmental Policy Act process will allow the public to have input, identify negative impacts, and recommend mitigations so that the increased visitation will be manageable. Well, we don't think that the impacts of the increased visitation really can be mitigated. BLM doesn't have the resources to manage it, especially without volunteer help. As they themselves have said, and Shelley made a point, there are no guarantees volunteer help will be forthcoming or be sufficient. There will be greater impact on the beaches. And cue up a slide here. That's the property. Let's take a look at our beaches here. State Parks budget, woefully inadequate. 2 rangers for the entire stretch of beaches from San Mateo to Santa Cruz County. This is the result. Panther Beach, graffiti, trash, totally trashed. Shark Tooth Beach, the same thing, it's heartbreaking. Go down there and take a look at it, you'll be sick. Next one. Davenport Beach. Next one. So I want to give a big shout out to the Davenport North Coast Association here. These guys are going out there every week and collecting the trash and bringing it up to the top. And also a big shout out to Save Our Shores, which has been collecting garbage and trying to keep our beaches clean. But folks, it's a losing battle without more money and more resources. Local services, they're already struggling. No new sources of dependable, ongoing funds have been identified for police, fire, etc. Peak traffic on good weather weekends is already too much for Highway 1, including Mission Street, Highways 92 and 17. Roads in Bonny, Doon, Davenport, and Swanton, they're really not suitable for much traffic. Are people going to be driving over here to get down to the coast? You bet. Process for deciding whether a project has potential impacts of 150,000 or more additional visitors should be done ahead of time, not afterwards. But that's how the National Environmental Protection Act environmental impact study will be done, afterwards. Before Fort Ord was named a national monument, there was a multi-year CRIMP process, CRMP, and that stands for Coordinated Resource Management and Planning. And that thoroughly analyzed all the issues. Something similar is apropos here. There's no reason to rush into something that will be forever. Let's be sure, for the animals, the plants, the environment, the surrounding communities, that this is the best idea. It's not something that's being pushed by people with their own, or perhaps very well-meaning agenda. They're a well-financed, slick sales campaign boiling it down to a few vague, even misleading promises and slogans. Local communities were never consulted before this campaign was launched. We should be the one whose voices count the most. Let's go to the next slide. Fireworks, 4th of July coming up. Remember what a mess that's going to be. Unfortunately, Bonny Beach will be closed once again. But the other beaches are going to have their share of impact. Next slide. So how does the property become a national monument? Shelley already went into that. The fact is that this very well might not happen. Congress is not going to be passing the bill. Republican Congress isn't anxious to create more federal lands that need a lot of money. And there are many more equally deserving properties already in the pipeline, like the Mojave, proposal for the Mojave Desert that Senator Feinstein has been backing for years. 300,000 acres that are really deserving of monument status. Also, very important, when they go to the Obama administration with this, with the Interior Department, they're going to be wondering, do the local people back this idea or not? That's where you guys come in. Take those handouts, those sheets, talk to Congresswoman Eshu's staff, to Senator Boxer's staff, talk to all your local representatives. Join our Facebook page, Friends of the North Coast. Visit our website, friendsofthenorthcoast.org. so we can communicate with you, keep you apprised of whatever's going on. And we'll also can be starting to circulate a petition that we're getting together, and hopefully very soon we'll have that available for people to sign. That's my pitch. Next up, we have Ray Hayes, noted local ecologist, who will be talking about the environment and the fauna of the Coast Dairies.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak with you. Very pleased to pass on some of the knowledge many of my teachers have taught me about the wildlife of the North Coast. I thought the best way to start this was to gauge interest. Can you give me a shout out if you want to support the wildlife of our North Coast for future generations? Me too. And all Americans indeed strongly support keeping and restoring the wildlife of our nation so the future generations can enjoy it. This quote was up briefly earlier. I think it's so true. We have a lot to learn if we're going to conserve these species, if we're going to keep wildlife on the North Coast. That's the way we're going to preserve things. We know so little. One of the things ecologists talk about with wildlife are shifting baselines. We are born into a world and we think we know it, and that's the way it's always been, but we're only experiencing the world that is here now. 15,000 years ago, our North Coast looked like the African savanna with huge herds of animals and predators. Things changed quickly when humans arrived. Over the, is it 8, 10, 15,000 years that people have been on Santa Cruz's North Coast, generation after generation, have seen these wildlife species disappear. Each generation thought the world was different. When the Old World peoples got to the North Coast, indeed in the Monterey Bay area, they encountered the densest human population in North America. When they got here, the baseline they saw were these villages and many different native peoples. And these animals that also quickly disappeared from our North Coast. About in the early 1900s, we really hit rock bottom for wildlife on the North Coast. Clear cutting, really extensive use of the landscape. And only in the 60s or so did we start turning our attention to recovering wildlife. And many of you have seen these changes. We've started seeing the peregrine falcon back on the North Coast, bald eagles, the cougar, and someday soon we're going to see the California condor. What we're talking about tonight is a fork in the road. Do we continue building on this restoration and recovery of wildlife, or do we say, oh no, we tried, that's all we get? This is a collage of the sensitive species of our North Coast. We have many. This is not all of them. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them quickly. We mentioned the coho salmon. This is one of the top 10 species that the U.S. government expects to go extinct in the near future in the Pacific region. And it's in our creeks. Same with steelhead trout. We've got a local genetic stock of this species in our streams on the North Coast. Tidewater goby, this beautiful small fish in our lagoons on the North Coast. And we've just begun to see the recovery of badgers on the North Coast. Indeed, there are a lot of mammalian predators that I want to talk about. And badgers in particular are interesting because they make these dens in very sandy soil. And we don't have a lot of sandy soil on the North Coast. There are very, very small pockets of sandy soil where the badger can den. We don't know where those dens are. And those dens only exist where there are no people. They're very shy. Same with the cougar, very shy. And it's recovering. This is an animal that probably is helping to control the deer population, which is helping to keep our waters clean, because the deer would crop the understory. Here's a track of one cougar, thanks to the Santa Cruz Puma Project. These things, we're starting to understand the baseline of at least this species. How many are there? Where do they travel? In a short period of time. That's just one animal over a few months. And because we've got cougars, we've got lots of gray fox. All of you seen the gray fox? They're all over the North Coast now because the cougar controls the coyote, another wild dog. Hey, we've got wild dogs. It seems like, oh, they're just coyotes. We've got wild dogs on our North Coast. And we've got bobcats. Oh yes, the bobcat. Think about Europe, all of Europe, there's like 12 remaining bobcat-like things. Think about the diversity of these predators on our North Coast, and much of the world is missing these things. It's a very special place. And if you think you've seen them all, have you seen the ringtails on our North Coast? Very few people have. Kind of looks like a lemur or maybe a panda bear. Oh, by the way, most of China doesn't have any animals left either. We're special. We've recovered many of these predators, the birds as well. Here's a black-shouldered kite, totally protected by the state. Nests in shrubs and trees around our meadows. We've got this tricolored blackbird, soon to be listed as endangered on the North Coast. We've got red-legged frogs. Indeed, you may not know, our North Coast is center of the remaining most healthy population of California red-legged frogs. The experts expect it to be the last place this species hangs on. And they travel all over the landscape. Here's some tracks of California red-legged frog across the Swanton area. They're not just in ponds and creeks, they require every bit of the landscape. And they get run over trying to get to their places. These are road kills, trying to get to breeding ponds just north of Davenport. We've also got western pond turtles. They may get listed soon too. And like badgers, they require very specific habitats to lay their eggs in, way up in the grasslands. Very specific soils and slopes and exposures. We don't know where our remaining and very few western pond turtles are nesting. Kids love them. This is a great opportunity. We've also got a Lonely tiger beetle. This species, a beautiful beetle, endangered, only in Santa Cruz County, only in 5 patches. Is it further around on our properties in the North Coast? We don't know. Here's a blurry picture of San Francisco popcorn flower, but closer up. This endangered, state-listed endangered wildflower, only in Santa Cruz County. And this native rare rose, also in the North Coast. Santa Cruz cypress, it's not just at the Bonny Doon Eco Reserve, we just found it in Swanton. Maybe it's also more extensive in the North Coast. We also have one of the rarest plants in North America, the Santa Cruz mycrossa. There's 2 populations left, the annual dandelion. And don't forget, you may think that the Monterey pine is common, but we're one of 5 remaining stands. It's a threatened tree species. We've given this tree to the world. It's a very important timber tree. So this is the whole collage of what I just showed you. We know very little about the baseline. The decisions we may give up many of these species and many of the ranges of these species without documentation. It's taken years to know these species are here, but we don't know how many there are or the areas they use. Santa Cruz Mountains is an island surrounded by the ocean and development and intensive agriculture. It stands out in green here, doesn't it? The North Coast is a very important part of that island. There are many different land users. There's state parks, county parks, land trusts, BLM. I want to liken this to what many people think. Well, okay, it's a canvas. Many people appreciate art more than biology because biology is harder to understand. It's much more complex. I want to make an analogy that way for a moment if you'll bear with me. Here's our canvas. Our canvas has this removed from it because of intensive agriculture, urbanization, and roads. these areas are effectively devoid of the kind of biodiversity I just showed you. This is where we know this biodiversity, these wildlife species and plants live. Those are known locations, and we're finding new locations all the time. But these locations have been known because of volunteers largely spending hundreds of hours combing the landscape over the last 50 years. But we don't know everything, so I must darken the canvas. There's a lot of gray area. There's particular gray area in the middle here, if you'll notice. It's not because these species aren't there, it's because we haven't looked very well. It's been off limits. So here's the canvas I want you to squint at, famous one. So would we propose to do many things in that middle gray area that may further obliterate biodiversity without knowing what's there? I think we want to see the whole thing restored and maintained. Instead, we have many more proposals for developing this canvas, like a large parking lot, 4 Mile Beach, like a campground in the Speroni Wilder Ranch area, like potential more parking and interpretive facilities at Scott Creek, like a rail trail to bring thousands more people back and forth, like a parking lot on Cement Plant Road to access Coast Dairies, Chitoni Coast Dairies, like a trail system out of Laguna Creek, like who knows what's going to happen with the cement plant itself. We also have at least 20 miles of illegal trails through Wilder that no one's paying attention to closing or enforcing. And we have our beaches that Ted talked about that are contributing plastic to our ocean, choking turtles and birds. So here's the canvas further marred by what's proposed right now. What are we to do? I want to dispel a myth that's very popular by Disney. Wildlife sidles up to you and looks up with its big glassy eyes right into your eyes, right in your knee. Not true. Wildlife, at this point, the wildlife that remain, flee from humans. They don't den near humans. It isn't a question anymore. We've had many, many studies in the last 10 years that clearly show that increased visitation and human use in the wild landscape reduce predator abundance. Our precious predator population is indeed in close proximity to be loved to death. We cheer when World Wildlife Fund and the Nature Conservancy go to third world countries and say, these cultures, this wildlife, can really benefit from some sustainable development and ecotourism. They spend years and years studying how to do this right so the wildlife and the culture can be maintained through this visitation. At the same time, we would be sad to know if there's hundreds of squatters moving in on these projects and illegal trails and more use than was planned so that the cultures and the wildlife end up going away. Why isn't it the same for our North Coast? When will we have coordination between all the agencies that are barely able to handle the visitation they have right now? Instead, for future generations, it's better for business, long-term, sustainable business, to maintain the unique cultures we have and the wildlife over the long term. Thank you very much.
We don't want to leave out our noted, incredible wildlife photographer, world famous, Frans Lanting, environmentalist, North Coast resident for over 20 years. Frans, wind it up for us.
Thank you all. Can you hear me now? First, I'd like to thank the RBDA and especially Ted for organizing this evening. I know that the RBDA board members usually face like 10 to 20 people for the regular meetings, and the fact that there are so many of you, I think is a real indication how significant this issue for all of you is. So thank you all for showing up here as well. And I'd like to thank the previous speakers for addressing some of the things that we all need to consider as we make up our own minds, whether we want to support this National Monument Plan or whether we want to come out in opposition, and more importantly, how we will deal with the onslaught of people that come to the North Coast. Can we see the first slide? For many people, especially people from beyond our shores, the California coast has long been synonymous with Big Sur or Point Reyes. And our North Coast was the part of California coast that people drove through, and very few of them stopped. When I arrived here in the late 70s, and when I settled here in Bonny, Doon, this was still a place where the people who lived here and the people who worked here made the vital decisions that affected the quality of the environment. Can we see the next slide? Now we know that it is actually on par with these more celebrated parts of the coast of California. This is an aerial of Coast Dairies that I photographed just a week ago. And I've been pretty vocal, as many of you know, who've spoken, who've attended public presentations, that, can we see the next slide? I've been pretty vocal in my assertion that Santa Cruz County has a world-class environment, and that it has survived for many years through benign neglect rather than forward planning. Except, there have been these stubborn people here along the coast, who've been very conservative, and they've been very concerned about accepting any change in this community here. And thanks to those folks and political support from our elected leaders, that is why the North Coast the way it looks today. So if it weren't for Gary Patton and Marty Wormhout and many others, and many of the activists who are in the room here tonight, there would not be much left to fight over. So, can we see the next slide? I just want to back up Gray's story, because that was really enlightening. This is a diagram from a Nature Conservancy publication that was the result of a nationwide inventory of biological diversity. And look where the central coast of California comes out. This is literally where we live, is literally the hottest hotspot of biodiversity in all of North America. And that doesn't even include the marine resources offshore. So this is it, folks. What we take for granted is truly exceptional, if you didn't believe Gray from the get-go. So we should be very, very careful with what we accept and endorse as further changes. Can you see the next slide? I just want to magnify the pictures that Ted showed earlier, because I think we are seeing a very significant increase in the number of visitors to the north coast of Santa Cruz, and we're also seeing a very significant change in the demographic makeup of the people who come here. The use is very different from the way it used to be. And this is one of the direct results. Can we see the next slide? This will not go away ever again. This is million years old geomorphology, and I consider Panther Beach to be on par with Point Lobos and the Monterey Peninsula, and it's gone. It is completely trashed, and this happened in the last 5 to 10 years. Can you see the next slide? And this is new on 4 Mile Beach. This just began to surface in the last couple of months. So let's look at the next slide. So this is 4 Mile Beach, as I've known it for many years, as I've been proud to take people from all over the world there and say, this is what we have here. So can we see the next image? And this is Coast Dairies. The beaches turned over to state parks, which is totally unable to take care of its priceless heritage. Is there anyone here from state parks tonight? I wish there was somebody here, but it is just another indication that there is a problem here, that we need a more organized process of letting the stakeholders talk to each other instead of having all these separate conversations. I don't think that the private funders and the government entities that put money behind Coast Dairies had this in mind. Can you see the next slide? So now we're facing decisions about what's going to happen with Coast Dairies. Will it become a national monument or not? We do know that BLM is going to start opening it up. Rick made some comments about that. And I read through the environmental assessment that BLM has published, and its conclusion was that the environmental impact of this phase 1 of opening up of Coast Dairies, Rick refers to it as a pressure valve release, that the total environmental impact is going to be limited to less than 1 acre, because they measure the width and the length of the trail. And the impacts will not go beyond that. The infrastructure that will be used to accommodate all these visitors is this already overcrowded parking lot that serves people who want to go to Laguna Beach. So from the figures that I read in that environmental assessment, we could expect on a busy day 200 to 250 people there. So that means 10,000 people a year, and that's just the beginning. And this is all being endorsed by BLM as a phase 1. I think if this is the way that Coast Dairies is going to be developed, we have reasons for concern. So, with all due respect to Rick and his colleagues, because I know they have the best intentions, and so have Shelley and her people, I feel that all of us here have a responsibility to contribute not just to a discussion about the details, as Rick mentioned, but a discussion about the principles. We need to make decisions now that will affect the coast for generations to come. I really feel we're at the cusp of a historical process, and we either let development run away with the coast. Gray referred to the rail trail, great in principle, but that means several thousand additional bicyclists on the North Coast every day. Parking lots at 4 Mile Beach, parking lots there, trail development. It is helter-skelter. This is what is known in environmental literature as the tragedy of the commons. Everybody comes and takes a piece from a resource that is really precious and finite in nature. So I feel we need to do better than this. I think this is the time for all the stakeholders to commit themselves to a guided process of planning for the future of the North Coast. And that process belongs in the office of our elected supervisor. It does not belong in the office of BLM in Holliston. It does not belong in the office of Semper Fireman's Fund on the other side of the hill. This is our coast. Here and we work here, and we've taken care of the coast as best as we could. And if we want to be as proud of leading visitors around when our children are here, we better make the right decisions now. Because once the genie is out of the bottle, it will not come back. And I'm really, really fearful that unless we act in a very proactive fashion, that the North Coast of Santa Cruz is going to start looking like Southern California very soon. Thank you very much.